Thanks for checking out this movie review video. So this is for the 1972 giallo film Tropic of Cancer, and this is the very first giallo film I've ever seen shot in Haiti. I've seen a few giallo films that have been shot different places. Probably the most interesting recently, other than this one being shot in Haiti in Port-au-Prince, is the one that was shot in Lisbon, Portugal, which I'm trying to remember which one that one was. That The Killer with the Thousand Eyes? It might be, but you'll hear that come up a few times in this review. Anyway, this one, Tropic of Cancer, is directed by Giampaolo Lomi, who also did The Barons, and Edoardo Mulargia, who did a lot of westerns, no big surprise there, Escape from Hell and Hotel Paradise. This is the first time I've seen a giallo film that has been directed by two people at the same time. Usually it's just one director. So I was kind of like, oh, this is interesting. The script for this was written by Lomi, Mulargia, and Anthony Steffen. Steffen also wrote scripts for Django, The Bastard, Shango, and The Killer with a Thousand Eyes, which he was also in, because Anthony Steffen is also an actor. So actor-writer, not a whole lot of people kind of cross that threshold and kind of do both those things. So just interesting to see. So I dig the upbeat music as the plane comes into Port-au-Prince in the very beginning, and I also like how they, especially early on in the film, they show a lot of Port-au-Prince. So that's one of my favorite things kind of about giallo films in general. A lot of the times they take you on a trip. They show you a lot of the architecture, they show you the streets, they show you the local culture a lot, and that happens a lot in this film. It kind of almost feels like this film was just a vehicle to get a look at kind of like Haitian culture in Italy. That's really kind of what it feels like, because the script is not very good. The story's not that great. It's very kind of whatever. And they spend a lot of time just kind of like going around, showing you things, focusing on the voodoo aspect of things and the rituals, as they call them, the ceremonies that go on. Sure, there's a story going on here. Sure, there's a plot to it, but it's not that great. But I do appreciate, how exploratory it is. And I think giallo in general, I see that in the film, even if they're, filming in their native Italian country or if they're going somewhere else. But it seems like when they go to another place like Port-au-Prince, Haiti for this film, they're more apt to put even more exploration into it. And it's interesting. I mean, it works. The shot of all the ice flying out of the truck is a very cool visual. Obviously, that visual comes back from the opposite perspective in the nightmare that Grace ends up having much later, or daydream, or drug-induced hallucination. I'm not 100% sure which one it is, or maybe a mixture of all those things. Um, but it looked cool, especially because it looks like they shot it from kind of like underneath the back tail of the truck, and the ice just comes like out in front of the camera, and it comes like splashing down and breaking and going all over the place in slow motion. It just looked really cool. It's not a shot I've really seen before. And for something like that, a lot of times, you would just shoot it looking at the back of the truck, not looking from underneath behind, of the back of the truck. So I just kind of like that perspective. And overall, directing was pretty good for this film. It looked good. Cinematography, pretty solid. Decent camera movements, as you get in a lot of giallo films, to kind of open up scenes and kind of keep people and audience members more engaged in the film. Pretty good. Nice creeping POV shot to create a sense of danger for Dr. Williams. And even better when you see the black glove hands take the vials of venom. It really does create this initial feeling of danger, that Williams is in danger. And then you kind of feel like that even more so when he finds the bodies of Douglas and of Krotz, who were his assistants, and you're like, ugh, it kind of feels like the killer is kind of maybe closing in on him. And it's furthered, obviously, by the setup where he's in his house, in his work area, basically, with all the mounted spiders and the vials of venom. And he walks away, and this gloved killer, comes in and steals from him. So it lets you know that, someone's been in his house, and they're looking at, or at least surveilling him to some degree, and have an interest in what he's doing. So it kind of puts him in danger. Now, Mr. Peacock is a very interesting, flamboyant character. These are the types of characters I love to see in giallo films. Just really quirky. It's really kind of odd. his like blonde hair with the perm is really interesting as well, and just his character in general. The fact that he's keeping peacocks, they call him Mr. Peacock. He's very rich, obviously. I mean, that's the idea I get from him, and he's shifty dude at the same time. Like he's in league with I forget the one guy's name. I have it written down at some point, but the guy who he's in league with trying to get whatever this formula is from Dr. Williams. And then he gets threatened by the guy, which I don't really understand why he would then go and be like, oh, well, I'll just get the formula myself after that. When he's specifically warned not to do that, although I'll talk about that a little bit later. Another giallo film with cockfighting in it. Are there any other films, giallo films that you've seen that have cockfighting in it? Yes, The Killer with a Thousand Eyes, which was also written by Anthony Steffen, or he participated in writing that one. So I guess he has a thing about cockfighting, I think. Also, there was, I think there may have also been a kill with a spear gun in, I may be wrong on this, but I think there was a kill with a spear gun. And there was a kill with the spear gun in this. I always like to see the spear gun kills. For a long time, I wasn't seeing that at all in giallo films, and then all of a sudden, I've seen like 3 of them within the past few months that have spear gun kills. I like it. I like it. Williams establishes himself as a badass when he goes after the guy at the cockfight. Yeah, that kind of comes out of nowhere. The guy who later ends up dead, he just kind of like falls over. It looks like maybe he just kind of like had an aneurysm or something during the one of the rituals, the voodoo rituals. It seems like it's out of nowhere. Like he's kind of like eyeing this guy up when he shows up to the cockfight, and then at one point he's just like after him, and he's just like punching the guy, and you're like, what is happening here? Like, is there a backstory to this? And I don't, either I missed it, I don't really think I missed it, but it seemed like they didn't really explain that situation so much. Very odd, but cool. I mean, it's a cool moment because, the little rough and tumble injected into the film, and it gives you this kind of feeling of, okay, things are amping up. Williams isn't just someone who's being stalked. He's kind of a badass himself, so you go, Dr. Williams. It's very curious when they find out that Douglas was exsanguinated. I think this kind of goes to what Dr. Williams says later in the film, where the formula that he had done something like it destroys hemoglobin. So basically, it just like breaks down people's blood, I guess. It's very weird. At one point, and I don't know if this was just like an issue with, or like an issue with translation from the native Italian to English subtitles, but there was kind of something said by the police about kind of like water being in the veins of one of the victims. So I think that's what they were alluding to, is that the formula kind of like breaks down the hemoglobin, breaks down the blood. I feel like Williams looks at everyone in a suspicious manner. He does have this tendency to kind of like always have that look on his face of just like, it's like side-eyed looking at everyone, basically. Even when it's like looking head on, like still kind of side-eyed, you know what I mean? He's just kind of very suspicious of everyone, which makes him look suspicious at the same time and seem very suspicious. For a while, I was actually considering, maybe he is the killer here because he is such a weird dude. He's just like creeping around, especially when he was at that dinner party with a ton of people, and then he just like walks away from it. And nobody really asks where he went, what he was up to, because he's gone for quite a while. And that's when he finds Krutz's dead body, and he doesn't say anything about it. So, like, that's super suspicious. When you find a dead body, and then you're just like, oh, yep, that's a dead body. And then you leave, and you don't say anything to anyone. You seem suspicious then. But, giallo films, not the best written all the time, especially not films like this one. This one's not that great. So you kind of expect that level of writing to a degree. Things that happen but aren't actually explained and just seem very off and odd. And Williams himself comes off as suspicious when he keeps finding dead bodies by himself. Yeah, not only when he finds the dead bodies he doesn't say anything, but just the fact that it's always just him finding these dead bodies on his own. And it's just like, that's suspicious. The dinner table discussion of Williams, Grace, Fred, Garner, and Peacock about voodoo alludes to their overall view of the people of Haiti. they're very intrigued by the culture, but they also seem to be a little bit afraid of the culture. It's that whole kind of like the culture that you're not aware of, that you don't know. Like it kind of seems exotic, so it's kind of interesting, but at the same time, something like voodoo that they're talking about also seems a little bit scary. Like it could be kind of dangerous. So, and a lot of people kind of feel that way when they're kind of out of their element and when they're dealing with another culture, especially being immersed in it, because you're not familiar. There's that kind of mix of feeling like excited and exhilarated and interested in it and you want to know more, but also like a little bit reticent to get too deep into it, and because you think it could potentially be dangerous, because people often have fear of the unknown, and in that instance, culture is unknown. The way the ceremony is shot is very dizzying, between the movements of the people involved and also the camera work and how they do that. A lot of kind of like rough camera work that makes it feel like, well, I mean, the camera like is inside of that kind of ceremony as it's going on. And it makes you feel like you as a viewer are like jumping around with everyone participating in the ceremony. So it gives it this kind of like chaotic feeling. The vague talks about getting the formula Williams has reminds me of $5 for an August Moon. If you haven't seen that giallo film, that is a Mario Bava film that he didn't have anything to do with the writing, so the script really isn't the best. He did want to kind of change that last minute, but ended up not having time before he had to shoot. So it's not a great story, but it looks visually amazing. Edwige Fenech is in it, which you know how I feel about Edwige. And yeah, it's definitely worth watching. But just know the story's not the best. But it has that similarity with it, where there's like someone who has like a formula for something, and everyone's trying to get this formula. So it's very, very similar right here. So I just kept thinking back to that film and kind of thinking to myself, this is kind of interesting, especially because of the setting. But I'd much rather be watching $5 for an August Moon, honestly. Williams brushes off Fred's disappearance, but should be worried like Grace is. Yeah, when they're kind of like in the market area, the outside market area, and Fred just like wanders off, and Grace is kind of like, and then all of a sudden Williams shows up, and then he's not that concerned about Fred being gone, but Grace obviously is concerned, and then he just like Williams is just like, oh, I don't know, he probably went somewhere. Yeah, but like he showed up with his wife. Like they were together shopping, and then all of a sudden he just disappears. Well, then later, Fred himself is basically just like poo-pooing it and just being like, "Oh, well, I was over here trying to buy this thing." Yes, but you were shopping together. It's another one of those things where it's like it doesn't really make sense. Kind of not that great writing, but we accept it because it's giallo. Grace spotting Murdoch dead, hanging upside down at the slaughterhouse, is an unexpected moment. That was an interesting surprise, where she goes into the slaughterhouse, which, first of all, I don't know why she was, like, going to the slaughterhouse. I guess to take a tour of it? Is that, like, a thing? It's weird. But then, out of nowhere, you're not expecting it. Murdoch is dead, hanging upside down from one of the hooks. I like that touch. So, I don't even know what that note is. I'm going to skip it. I messed up. Prater. I'm sorry. It autocorrected to prayer. I'm like, what is prayer? Prater ends up being the first victim you actually see the killer take care of. Everyone else is like they're dead, and then you're finding them after the fact. With Prater, he's actually shown being strangled by the black gloved killer. So that's a more brutal, more violent, more intimate moment that happens in the film, where it feels like it kind of takes it up to that next level for a giallo film. Grace's daydream is really odd, although it does incorporate a bunch of things from the film that happened previously, and it also happens at an odd time when she walks away from her phone call that she's having with Williams. She calls Williams and she's like, I'm not feeling well. Come help me out, because obviously something with the flowers that she was given. But it just makes no sense where she's on the phone with him. He comes back to the phone and he's like, what? Why aren't you there? And she just like wandered away from the phone. I guess because she was like high. She was under the influence of whatever was on these flowers. But yeah, so it was a weird time for her to just wander away. But then you get this crazy kind of like daydream, nightmare, hallucination thing that goes on quite a while. I mean, it was kind of interesting to watch and like visually very appealing to a degree because of like all the camera movements and all like the wacky stuff going on. and you get that shot again of all the ice falling down, which I don't know why, but I really like that shot. I think it looks cool. But yeah, interesting. Farmer's threat to Peacock. Oh, I'm sorry, Farmer. Oh my God, another autocorrect. Garner. Garner's threat to Peacock when he pulls out of their arrangement casts suspicion on him as the main killer, obviously. Um, which this speaks to. Yeah, hold on. I'll just, Peacock. I'll talk about it again. Fred really gives Grace the third degree when she asks what he was up to when he disappeared. Like I was talking about earlier, Fred kind of tries to brush it off, but he also gets like really crappy with Grace, which there's no other way to come off more suspicious than like immediately getting defensive with something like that, especially when it's such like a normal situation for your wife to be concerned that you just kind of like disappeared, and he's just like defensive about it. He just like is a total jerk. I guess that's supposed to kind of show that their marriage is not doing very well. That's my best guess. But it's also just not written well. Peacock being shot with the spear gun is a good moment, like I talked about, like seeing the spear gun kills. It seems like it's more personal once his face gets stepped on as well. He gets shot, he's in that, mud, he falls down, and then the killer comes up and puts his shoe on his face and is like pushing his face down into the mud with the foot. That's that next level of brutality. I mean, to a degree, I find that to be like more personal and more brutal than even the strangulation of Prater at this point. Kind of disturbing, to be honest, the way it goes. So I guess in the end, I don't know if he bled out enough that he died, or if he actually had been then drowned because there wasn't enough water and his face was being, well, he would have suffocated actually, because it probably wouldn't have been the water getting into his lungs. It probably would have been his face getting mashed so far into the mud that he couldn't breathe. So I think he probably was suffocated at that point. Was it hot steam that Garner ends up being burned with? Because it really just looked like someone shooting a fire extinguisher. I'm pretty sure fire extinguishers don't do that to people's faces. So I think they were trying to play it off as hot steam being sprayed on Garner's face. Looked good, though. The practical effects of his burns all over his face, and I think his hands as well, looked pretty good. So I get the point, but I was like, it's a fire extinguisher, man. It was funny when Garner kept getting poked with the metal pole when he was kind of like in that metal pit. I don't even know what that place was. Is that like a sugarcane processing plant? I think that's what it was, but I'm not 100%. If anyone knows, you can put it in the comments. But when he's like down in that hole where there's a bunch of, I guess, kind of like broken up sugarcane, he keeps putting his hands up because he's going to like pull himself up. And then the killer just keeps whacking him, his hands and his head with the pole, but he just keeps going back and doing it. My only thought is he must have been blinded from when he got nailed in the face with the steam. That's my guess. Otherwise, just totally stupid that he would just keep trying to get up out of there when he's getting whacked with the pole. But I laughed at it. I thought it was kind of funny. How did Fred slap Grace and then pull a gun with the exact same hand that fast? Now, it may have been too fast and I didn't see it properly, but the part where Fred slaps Grace, it looks like he slaps her with his right hand and then all of a sudden pulls a gun and it's his same hand. And it's literally like, there's like no time. He's just like slap gun. And I'm just like, how did this happen? It's just like such a weird cut. And you're just like, either this guy is like the fastest draw that you have ever seen, or there's a problem here, continuity issue. So the drug destroys hemoglobin. Okay, yeah, that was stated. I already talked about that. Williams actually brings it up that that's what the formula is all about. What the actual purpose of that would be, who knows? Why so many people are trying to get their hands on it, who knows? Because it kind of seems like these were people who were like, we can make a lot of money on this formula. How are you going to make a lot of money on a formula that destroys people's blood? Where is the market for this? What is the use for this other than just killing people? I guess maybe they're going to sell it on the black market as like an assassination tool. I don't know. That's my best guess. So Philip was the killer all along. I think he was the owner of the hotel, if I'm not mistaken. And he makes a stupid decision by shooting someone in front of a crowd of people. Another just not great writing. He didn't need to shoot the guy, the police officer, when he did. He just does, like, out in front of so many people, he just, like, shoots. And here he is. He's a white guy. He's a foreigner shooting a local in front of a giant group of locals. What do you think is going to happen, man? Then someone automatically is like, he's a murderer. And then they start beating his car as he's in it. And then they're throwing Molotov cocktails on it. And then it's in flames. And then he's dying inside the car, which, at that point, no one's going to feel sorry for this guy. Not only was he a killer, but he was making very stupid decisions, obviously. And then it makes even more sense that Kratz was found dead in his room because Philip would have had access to that, being the owner of the hotel. Just saying. The dancing around the burning car with Philip in it is reminiscent of how the ceremonies were shot. It's kind of like a similar feel to it, bringing back that kind of chaos of the moment. And I think maybe really trying to draw a parallel between the earlier ceremony and this ceremony as kind of like a product of voodoo to a degree, or kind of like capturing the darkness of voodoo. Just saying. Everything between Williams, Fred, and Grace is so odd and doesn't really make sense. Yeah, the relationships there are really weird. Like, Fred is there under the pretense of, like, wanting to see his old friend Williams. Williams is like, Fred, what are you doing here? Then Grace is there with Fred because that's his wife, but she's not that interested. They're having problems in their relationship. And then she's immediately interested in getting it on with Williams. And then Fred doesn't seem all that concerned that his wife is getting it on with Williams. It's just weird. Like, this just goes back again to, like, script's not that well done. This is what we expect. But it just feels so odd. It's like, this is not how these people would be acting, most likely. Just my opinion. Since the setting is very unique for a giallo film, there's a lot to look at throughout the film, and that's one of the biggest pluses to the movie, in my opinion. Now, as far as giallo films go, this is pretty far down the list for me, which I am keeping a whole list of my ranking of, like, my number one all the way down to my last, so it's pretty far down there. But Tropic of Cancer, out of 5 stars with half stars in play, 1.5 stars. Thought about 2, but no, it's not quite there. 1.5 stars. It's not that great of a film. I don't think I'll be watching this one again unless someone I know really wants to watch it and I'm around. Then I'll be like, I guess I can partially pay attention. Which, there's subtitles, so I would have to pay more attention. But yeah, so I probably won't watch it. Anyway, would love to hear your opinion on this film and just talk about giallo in general. Go ahead and put some comments down there. We will get nerdy about it. Do me a quick favor, hit subscribe if you haven't already. That's your way to repay me if you like this video or any video I have ever done. It is quick, it is painless, it costs you $0, and it, like I said, it's your way to repay me. It really does keep me motivated to keep this stuff going. But regardless, I really do thank you for taking your time to check this video out. And until next time, keep it brutal.